Hello and welcome back to another introductory video about R and RStudio. In our last video, we took a look at the Packages and Helps tab. In this video, we're going to focus a bit more on the Plots tab, and we're going to introduce one final special file type that we can use inside of RStudio. Alright, when you're ready, let's come over to the New File button. And what we're going to do, instead of having an R script open, we're going to scroll down a little bit further and go to RMarkdown. Okay, if you happen to get this pop-up window asking you for the updated version of the Markdown package, let's go ahead and install that. And then we should end up with a pop-up window that looks like this. Now, what RMarkdown has the ability to do is to produce really lovely PDF documents. And not only do they contain really nice visuals that we can create using some of the packages from the tidyverse, we can also include mathematical code, and we can format our PDF document really nicely using Mictech, which we downloaded in one of our previous videos. I'm going to go ahead and select PDF, and then for the title, let's call this Iris Data. Inside of the author box, you can type your name if you wish. I'm going to leave it blank for now. And then I'm going to click OK. And the following screen should come up for us. Now up at the top, we have information about what our title is going to look like. So we have the title, we have the output format, and we have the date. There are other options that we can put inside of this preamble. And what we do is we type out the command and we use a colon. So for example, if I did at a later point want to add an author, I could type the word author, put a colon, and then notice how the color of the word author changes from black to blue. This indicates that we've done this correctly, and now I can add in an author. On lines 8, 9, and 10 are our first chunk. Typically, a chunk is a subsection of code that we can copy and paste from an R script. This section of our Markdown is what actually will do the work or the background work inside of R. And every chunk has a similar structure. It always starts with 3 of these quotes followed by a curly bracket and then the letter R. Then we leave a space and we give a name to the particular chunk. So in this case, this first chunk is called Setup. In other words, this is a chunk that's going to include all of the preamble that we need in order to run all of our code underneath. After the word Setup, we can include other features that we want this chunk to have. And you'll learn more about these special features later in your career with R and RStudio. Every chunk also concludes with the same set of 3 quotes. Since this is our setup and preamble, let's go ahead and ask R in this first chunk to load in tidyverse. This way, if we save this R Markdown and open it up later, R will remember to open up the tidyverse package for us to use. Awesome. If you remember that the command we need is library tidyverse, that is correct. Okay, let's move on from our first chunk and go down to our first heading. Our first heading reads R Markdown. Notice that there are 2 number signs in front of the words R Markdown. This is what indicates to R that we have a heading, and I believe there are 3 different heading sizes. And if you want to get an idea of what the different sizes look like, what we can do is we can actually run our R Markdown by coming up to the top and clicking the knit button. And let's knit to PDF. Okay, we're going to get a prompt as to where we want to save our file and what we want that file name to be. So I'm going to save my file name as iris data. And if everything goes well, you should now have a beautiful PDF file that has been created using this RMarkdown file. And we can see the 3 different heading titles here on the left. Okay, so a single number sign being our largest heading, followed by 2 number signs being in the middle, and then finally 3 number signs being the smallest subheading. I'm going to go ahead and close the PDF for now, so that we can continue talking about other aspects of the RMarkdown. Anywhere where you see a white background, like the text that I'm highlighting, all of this text is going to be rendered as words. Notice that they're giving us some indication about how to include a URL. And they're also giving us an indication about special formatting. In this case, the word knit is going to appear in bold. All right, let's scroll down a little bit further to our second chunk. What is the name of this chunk? This chunk name is called cars. Now, one common error that I do see quite a lot is that R typically doesn't allow us to name 2 different chunks the same thing. So if I come down to the chunk that's on my line number 29, and I also try to name this chunk cars, and I try to knit this to PDF, let's see what happens. Inside the console, I get execution halted because there's a duplicate chunk called cars. Inside of this first chunk called cars, let's change the name. And I'm going to change the name to iris. And instead of the word cars, let's change the word cars to iris. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask R to give us some summary statistics about the iris dataset. If we want to run just this singular chunk, we can come over here to the right and press the play button. And if we do that, underneath the chunk, we're going to get output very similar to what we would get inside of our PDF if we chose to knit. We'll talk more about how to interpret some of these numbers a little bit later. But if you do have some statistics background, what the summary function will do is it's going to give us a 6-number summary, the minimum and maximum value of our data set, quartile 1 and quartile 3, as well as the mean and the median. For variables that involve labels, what it's going to do is it's going to give us the count of all of those labels. Let's scroll down to the heading where it says including plots. And let's rename this chunk to iris plot. And instead of the word pressure, let's replace the word pressure with iris. And before we go ahead and knit this RMarkdown file, let's just run this chunk and see what happens. If we scroll down, we see that the plot function attempts to give us a bunch of different scatter plots for our data. Now, this can be quite confusing to look at, and most of the time we're only going to be wanting to actually view one of these scatter plots, or maybe at most 2 of these scatter plots at the same time. So let's go back up to our iris plot chunk, and let's type the following code. We're going to assign to the letter A part of the iris dataset. The way that we've designed this code is to get columns 1 and 2. And then once we've run this code, we want to plot the object A. So let's go ahead and run this particular chunk and see what happens. So what we're going to get as output is sepal length and sepal width given as a scatter plot. These are columns 1 and 2 of our iris dataset. Since we know that all of our chunks are working, let's go ahead and knit our Markdown file. And before we go, there's just 2 more things that I want to point out just to make you aware of. Inside of the chunk called iris, we didn't have any special arguments or commands for this particular chunk. Because we didn't, notice that our code actually appears inside of our PDF file along with the expected output. Coming back and scrolling down to our next chunk, we have the echo equals false argument. What the echo equals false argument does is it ensures that we do get the correct output, but notice that echo equals false prevents R from actually displaying the code inside of our PDF document. And this is a really nice feature for when we want to display visualizations, but we don't necessarily need our reader to see all of the code that we used to produce that visualization. So hopefully you enjoyed your introduction to our Markdown today. As we move through our videos in the future, we probably will be using our Markdown more so that you can get a little bit more practice with these particular file types. So until next time, feel free to like and subscribe, and if you have any questions, put them down into the comment section and we will get back to you as soon as we can.